Hi, I want to make a video on redundant reactions, and in this video I want to describe how I've mentioned this before. You can only experience so much suffering before you say enough's enough, and to a certain extent, the more suffering you go through, the less life means something, because you're taking away the feelings in which life has its meaning and derives its meaning is through the feelings, the interactions you have. The more you feel, the more you have an interaction. The more you feel in the deprivation, the more you're likely going to feel the compensation. You're going to feel by compensation by feeling the release of, say, a negative feeling that you're experiencing. So when you're and really, I want to go back to the idea of this idea that you can only go through so much suffering, and you only go through so much suffering to a certain extent before you say enough's enough. So when enough's enough, you decided that enough's enough, and you just decide to take life in your own hands, and you say enough's enough, and I'm not going to take it anymore, be it a specific circumstance in reality or life in general. But to a certain extent, the more and more, and I think the point I wanted to make in the other video I made about this is these redundant reactions. You can only go through so much and so much and so much, and you start having these redundant reactions and redundant reactions, and you keep doing it because you keep putting up with it, and you can only react a certain way. Obviously, each circumstance can be described as being different. Every circumstance is different. You're going to react a slightly different way, but you're reacting. You're still putting up with the same thing. Oh, I can't take this anymore. I can't take this anymore. You keep saying it, but you keep putting up with it. Yet it's so frustrating. You're forced into a circumstance, and it's a very linear way of describing reality, because reality forces you into these redundant circumstances. You can say it all you want. You can say you're not going to deal with it anymore, but it's like eating. You're going to do it over and over and over again until something happens to change. And the only time that you're going to change not eating is when you die. So like you can change putting up with a certain circumstance. Like I mentioned before, like an abusive relationship, you say it's enough, and you can keep saying it. It gets worse and worse, and sometimes you get stuck caught in a cycle where you just keep saying, I can't deal with work, I can't deal with work, and you just keep reacting almost the very same way. And there's a breaking point where you say, finally, enough's enough. But at a certain point, you reach it right before you reach that breaking point, or whatever it may be, you're caught in this cycle of redundant reactions where you're reacting the exact same way. You're doing the exact same thing, and that's the exact way that we describe reality. If it's not bad enough, um, then you're going to keep putting up with it, and you're going to keep having the same frustrating reaction over and over again. Sometimes you get caught in those interactions and reactions, and you get caught up in them, and you get almost no way you get used to it, and it just keeps on. You get used to the discomfort, like sort of like people get used to abusive relationships. They get used to it because they're so used to it. They're just by way of being used to it. They want to deal with it more than they want to deal with something that's better. They'd rather deal with that than change. And they'd rather deal with the circumstance of abuse, of a negative circumstance, and say getting over something, but they still react by saying, I can't deal with it anymore, I can't deal with it anymore. Or they keep dealing with it anyway. So you get caught up in these redundant reactions, and the real point I want to make is you can only go to a certain point. There's a breaking point before you say it's enough's enough. But to a certain extent, say with life in general, you have these reactions, and any circumstance in life, describing the circumstance can be applied, generally speaking, to any circumstance in life being applied to the life game in general. Life game in general is, I can't take anymore. I'm going to kill myself, and that's enough's enough. How many people have to die? You just keep reacting the same way. I can't take it anymore. Oh, I can't take it anymore. Oh, but you keep putting up with it, and you're caught in that cycle where you realize how mechanical the process is that you're living in. You're part of it. You recognize that you're sentient of it, but you're sentient of it beyond. You're sentient of the very reactions. You're sentient after the reactions have happened, because the reactions take precedent over you having a certain way, and you can only react more or less. And once you start reacting less, you're almost starting to fall victim to the reverse side of reality, which is getting used to pain or getting used to circumstances so much that obviously get stuck in, let's say, abusive relationships, and you put up with them, or the feelings that you start experiencing become more null and null and null and dull and dull and dull and dull and dull, and you start experiencing less sensation. And that's the natural conclusion. You experience more sensation or less sensation from something. And usually if you experience less deprivation from something, you're going to experience less satisfaction from something. And it usually by way of an equilibrium or compensation, you're going to experience more negative, more positive. If you experience more negative, you're going to experience more of a relief, because by its very foundation, The relief is coming from a spring of attention. You need more attention to relieve a positive. To relieve a negative, you need more tension to get more of a positive or more of a relief out of it, because it's based on the negative, and you're pulling the spring, and the positive you feel is based on how far and how long the spring you've been pulling it back for, how much tension's in that spring. And since it's based on a negative, it means the satisfaction you feel, since it's based off of a negative, the satisfaction that you feel because it's based off of a negative has an equal amount, controls how much you're going to feel in the relief or the positive, because it's called relief for a reason, because it's based on the negative, and it needs more negative to get a positive, because it's relief. It's relief, and it means something. It has value. So anyway, I was going to mention something else, but I might come back to that. So yeah, we can only take so much pain or so much suffering before we say enough's enough, and enough's enough, and enough's enough, and we get caught in these processes where we say enough's enough and enough's enough, but enough's never really enough. And we get caught in this very mechanical process where we recognize we just keep reacting in the same redundant way over and over and over again, and we just you react, and either you get used to the reaction that you're having. Something's exciting and exciting and exciting. It can be only exciting for so long before you realize you need more to get excited. And that's exactly how the mechanism works. You need more and more and more and more and more and more to get excited for the same thing. And that means, or not from the same thing, you need more and more, and not for the same thing. You need more and more. You need to change the thing that you're getting excited for, because the thing that you were excited for before is no longer exciting. Therefore, you have to increase your standards for exciting. So you need to find something else that floats your boat more than the thing that you're doing. So either you stop what you're doing, you create a gap, you create the spring, you make it longer for the spring to pull back, or you change the spring that you're pulling and completely. So you wait longer before you get on the roller coaster again, or you go skydiving instead, or whatever it may be, to make you feel something again. But you need that negative tension to create the positive, and usually the more negative tension, or the more there is in the negative tension, or whatever it may be, say not doing something you want, or filling some gap, because generally speaking that's all we're doing is filling gaps. When you didn't realize you wanted to go skydiving, like I mentioned before, but you realize you get so much excitement out of skydiving, but that's because you had an emptiness in you to begin with. So that skydiving was satisfying an emptiness in you that you didn't realize you had until you did it, and it was satisfying something in you. It's based on a deprivation that you were experiencing, that you were having. And so yeah, anyway, so even if you don't realize what's causing the deprivation, there's a deprivation being caused. If you find any excitement in something, it's based on a deprivation. Typically, it's based on some kind of deprivation you're experiencing. So if you're experiencing some kind of deprivation, it's based on some previous negative, or some kind of negative that's inside of you. Regardless of what you understand of it or not, it doesn't matter what causes the satisfaction, was what the point I want to make. Because you don't realize you're satisfying something that can be satisfied any number of ways. And it doesn't matter how you satisfy it, it's just a matter of you satisfying it. But it means something about how you satisfy it. Once it gets redundant, and you need to change things up to get that same satisfaction, or even more satisfaction, or even near the same satisfaction that you want to get out of something that you were experiencing satisfaction with. So it doesn't matter what causes it, but it matters once you need to change things up. But things need to be changed up, even though it doesn't matter what causes it, because the same thing over and over again is obviously going to create something different. So it applies to either excitement, or things you're looking forward to, or pains, or redundant reactions to positive or relief, or to deprivations that you're experiencing. So it can work in either way. And like I said before, it doesn't matter what causes the relief or the satisfaction. It just matters once the satisfaction exists, and it doesn't matter what causes it. but it needs to be changed every once in a while, and you're not going to experience it much. Is if you do the same thing, it's different standards on the same scale are going to change, and you're going to need to change it based on that, because something gets old and you need to try something different. I'm sorry, I'm so incoherent right now. So yes, to a certain extent, we're going to realize that we're stuck in the same mechanical reaction over and over again, where we're reacting a certain way until we say enough's enough. And to a certain extent, all these little pieces in life we can apply in general and saying, okay, we're just going to deal with the same old reaction. I can't take it anymore. Can't take it anymore. Oh, I love it. 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 But it more applies to I can't take it anymore, because that's the very mechanism of reality. But a reaction to say something of excitement, we're getting tired of something, it's creating a deprivation in you. When you're getting tired of something, it's creating a deprivation in you, and you want to find something else to satisfy it. So if you're getting tired of something, or you're excited, you react the same way, but the excitement can be, you can reach a limit to, say, in reaction you're having to a specific circumstance. The circumstance is generally the same. It's either a relief or it's a deprivation, and that's exactly what you're feeling, is relief or a deprivation. And there's nothing more. And there's redundant reactions, and redundant reactions are less relevant to the relief than they are. Although relief means something redundantly, because it's the same relief. The process is very redundant. When you're relieving and relieving, it's the same thing over and over again. It's relief, 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 and that's all you're doing, is relieving. You just get that sigh, and then you're right back to gratifying again. And it's a nice little fooling mechanism to get you to play the game over and over and over again, so you're stuck in the mechanism. Anyway, so yeah, when's enough? You're stuck in these very redundant mechanical reactions where you keep on saying, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore, until you finally do something, sort of like you finally do something in reaction to your boredom and not getting the relief that you were once getting out of an exciting event, or a satisfaction you were getting out of some event. Sort of like you do something to take away from the deprivation you're experiencing or the suffering you're experiencing, until you decide to change that redundant reaction. But the redundant reaction has to be taken on the initiative of the person experiencing it. But the person experiencing it is the person creating the redundant reaction. Obviously, it goes back to the idea that we're creating the redundant reaction. Our psychology is creating it. Our existence is creating this reaction, and our reaction can't exist any other way other than the same redundant reaction over and over again. Like eating, we're eating and we redundantly eat over and over again. It's either you do it or you don't do it. You keep on doing it, you stop, or you don't do it anyway, or you don't do it to begin with. And that's exactly the process we're caught up in. Nothing more, nothing less. So you realize just how many people have to die. Another person dies, I can't take it anymore. Another person dies, I can't take it anymore. And you see how you're just stuck in that until you finally reach a breaking point. And even though obviously it takes something to reach that breaking point, it obviously takes a little push every little time to reach a breaking point. You realize it's something that you're doing over and over again. And unless you take initiative, that redundant reaction is redundant, and it means something until it happens. So it's something that can be applied until the change happens. So it's something that exists until the change happens. So you realize, I can't take it anymore. You can't take it anymore, but you do it, and you do it, you have to do it, and you just keep saying it. That's your way of coping, and that goes back to the idea that we're coping through existence, and you realize just how mechanical this process is and linear this process is once you realize just how you're saying the same thing over and over again. I can't take it, I can't take it, I can't take it. But you keep taking it, and you're forced to take it in certain circumstances, and it's just a coping mechanism where you're forced to react the same way over and over again. You're shoe-lined into reacting the same way over and over again because there's no other choice in the circumstance. It's a way of coping, and the way of coping is getting stronger over certain circumstances, and circumstances that didn't need to exist to begin with. Why get stronger when you didn't have to get strong to begin with? You're forced into these circumstances, and obviously you're forced into it once you exist, and it's about mitigating against these things from happening in the future. And that's a point I've made plenty of times. You exist, how about you exist for a solution to the problem, and then adding to the problem. Adding more to the same old red line. How about you add to the green line for a solution? Or a blue line, whatever it was, the opposing line. So yeah, I don't know if I described this in exactly the way I want to describe it, but it essentially gets the point that where very redundant things were part of a redundant process are part of a very redundant, very chaotic, redundant mechanism working on redundant levels and every part of the mechanism working. It's working on just mechanisms bumping into each other, things interacting. We're just a tool machine interacting for this very function to move forward, part of the indulgence of reality, to force us into the indulgences that our guilty pleasures are. It's carrying forward our sperm and our eggs, and that's exactly what we're doing, is we're reinforcing that mechanism, and it's about fighting that mechanism and being part of the solution to that problem, that redundant process over and over again. And that's exactly the very foundation of over and over again until it ends, until you say enough's enough. And that's exactly up to us. When is enough enough? That's up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us. It is. Until we say enough's enough, and we just decide to take matters into our own hands and not let the process of reality take control of us. And we take it and we just decide to make our own fate, decide to solve the problem for ourselves. And the only problem that we can solve at this point is the problem saying, is life worth living for everyone anymore? Can we come to a conclusion, a democratic conclusion, where we can say, we can make a conclusion about, is this existence worth living, and when can we naturally put life itself to sleep? Because there's nothing much to this existence than the same redundant process, and forced into redundant situations of processes over and over and over again. And it's very mechanical, very basic, very linear, very functional, but very linear. Functional in the sense that it's working, but since it's working now doesn't mean it wasn't working in the past, and just because it's still here doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong with it. Just because life still exists doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with it. Doesn't mean it's automatically innately right. There's something wrong with life, and just because it exists doesn't mean the value that we're experiencing is in equilibrium. Obviously, you're applying the wrong concept to the wrong concept. Two completely contrived, contradictory concepts, or completely unrelated, irrelevant concepts to each other. So obviously that's relevant. So I think that's all I wanted to mention. So thank you, and sorry it was redundant. Anyway, yes, redundancy. We're forced into these redundant processes over and over again, and it's very mechanical and very basic and very part of life. So thank you, and until next time. If I have to mention anything else on the subject, I'll mention in another video. So thank you. Until next time. Goodbye.